Welcome to the Southern Voice Rock Show. Here's your host, Jim Harris.
Welcome to the Southern Voice Rock Show. We have an exciting episode for you today. Our guests are Bonnie Bramlett of Delaney and Bonnie, the first lady of Southern rock. She has shared a stage and toured with such stars as Eric Clapton, George Harrison, Dave Mason, the Allman Brothers, and she has some wonderful rock stories to share with us. We have Steve Morse, guitar player extraordinaire from the Dixie Dregs, Kansas, Deep Purple, and he's going to talk about his new band and what's going on with them. In the 1970s, Bruce Blackman hit the charts with his band Starbuck and the song Moonlight Feels Right. Bruce dropped a new album late last year, and it is doing very well on the charts, and he's going to talk to us about that. We are so fortunate to have with us today the legendary Bonnie Bramlett. Bonnie, welcome to the Southern Voice Rock Show.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be on the Southern Voice Rock Show. I'm a Southern rock singing girl.
Yes, you are. So you were just telling me about a nice gift you just got. Would you share that with our listeners?
I have been blessed. I'm going to tell you something. My life and my career is so blessed with some of the greatest guitar players in the world, some of the greatest musicians, some of the greatest road crews you've ever known. I'm telling you what, I just had a stroke recently, and I'm recovered quite well.
Well, that's good to hear.
30 years ago, Dickie Betts gave me a 1918 Lady Martin because I saved its life. It was about to get destroyed. I saved that guitar's life. I told him, you can get another girlfriend. You ain't going to get another guitar like this, Dickie. So he said, well, because you saved this life, I'm going to give this guitar to you. My life has its ups and downs, and I wasn't real secure about how good a care I was going to be able to give this guitar. I was a Ramblin' Rose at that time. That's how come I got to sing with Stillwater and all those other bands. They said, you want to sing? And I said, heck yeah. I chose to let my friend Stephen Stills, who had one of the greatest Martin guitar collections. He had a couple 1918s in his collection as well, not to mention the rest of his collection was just phenomenal. And so Stephen was my angel, and he put my guitar in with his collection so it'd be safe. And today, Stephen just sent my guitar back to me.
Oh, wow.
And it made a 30-year revolution. And there she stands right now, Angeline.
What a great story.
1918 Lady Martin that Dickie Betts gave me, and Stephen Stills babysat and took care of all these years so that I could have it today. And right there it is.
I'm sure there are a lot of stories. And as I mentioned, we just spent some time with Mark Andes from Spirit, and then obviously later a lot of other great bands. But Spirit was on the bill at the Atlanta Pop Festival, the first one in 1969, along with you guys. I think you were on the first day.
Yeah.
But then also importantly, Delaney and Bonnie appeared at the free concert in Piedmont Park.
With the Allman Brothers, yes, we did. And nobody showed up. Everybody was going to do the free concert, but nobody showed up with the Allman Brothers and Delaney and Bonnie and friends. It was history, and I'm so proud to be a part of that history. We were just crazy, and we just didn't have any rules, so we didn't abide by none.
Tell us the Janis Joplin story from the Atlanta International Pop Festival.
Janis was mad at Southern Comfort because, and I quote, out of all the whiskey she said sold for them, Southern Comfort, all they gave her was a damn effing hair coat. Well, what they did was they gave her this full-length mink coat. She hated that. It was a hair coat to her. Oh, I loved her so much. I do love her still. She commenced to drinking vodka. She didn't drink Southern Comfort anymore after the Atlanta Pop Festival. We ran out of booze at the Pop Festival, and the only thing that was there was Owsley and his Clear Light Acid, right? So he dosed all the water, the cops. We dosed everybody. I didn't dose them, but they did. And, Janis walked around with her hand over her bottle because she didn't like any of that going on. She didn't want to get dosed. I don't drink nothing like that. The lady pretty much kept a tight rein on me as far as wandering around and getting in trouble that I didn't need to be in. As the whiskey ran out, you know how the racetrack is in that slant?
Right.
You know how it racetrack. So we were at the top of the racetrack, and the power went off. Johnny Barbados was playing drums. Remember he played with the Turtles? Great drummer. Well, the power went off, and so he just commenced to taking the drum solo. I wish somebody would have recorded that because that was a monster. And while the power went off, Janis and I went down and got the keys to the ambulance out of the racetrack, drove down the highway a little bit to the first liquor store we could find, and we filled that ambulance full of liquor. I promise we did. And we came back full siren going around around that racetrack. Me and Janis are in there just drunkards and skunks, having the best time of our life. We delivered the rest of the whiskey to the rest of the concert.
Bonnie, I'm going to guess that most people have never stolen an ambulance with Janis Joplin.
Well, we just borrowed it. It was ours anyway. I mean, we was paying for it to be there, so we figured we could borrow it for a minute. We weren't gone but about 10 minutes. We had guardian angels because I don't know how we made it, but we made it.
It's funny, there's a widely known story involving you being with a fellow rock star when he said something inappropriate about two other musicians, and you reacted with a slap. Would you mind telling us who that was and the aftermath of that situation?
Oh, is it about another songwriter from England, maybe?
Elvis Costello?
Yeah, it could be. Or Declan. I'm going to tell you something. I've been asked this question about the Elvis Costello story over and over again. And every time somebody asks me that, I just say this. I don't know how you feel about Elvis Costello, but I think he's probably one of the greatest songwriters. I know songwriters are great ones. And he's a poet. Saw his songs. I had no idea, I just thought somebody naming themselves Elvis. I guess, please, come on. And him and I got into a little bit of beef about music, and he crossed the line. But I say this. I say, wouldn't it be a damn shame? Because I think I'm a pretty dang good singer, and I think he's a great songwriter. I think he's a master artist. And I'd hate for us to go down in history over a fucking bar brawl. I think we deserve more than that. It's a boring little story, and nobody wins. Everybody lost. It's like having a knife fight in a phone booth. Everybody got hurt.
Bonnie, I think the beautiful part of that story is it shows the passion involved behind music. No, you're absolutely right. I could understand not wanting to be known for that, but that absolutely...
It was a big part of it, but it was a hurtful part for him. And he's got little kids. I just hate to keep that going. Am I wanting to talk about it? Keep my name in the press? I hope not. I think I've already done enough to keep my name in the press, and it certainly ain't to keep his name in it because he's absolutely embarrassed and ashamed. He called and apologized to me many years ago and invited me to his concert, and I went to his concert, and I took my jazz album and an olive branch, and he took that olive branch and cherishes it this day. The part doesn't get written about. Nobody wants to write about the apology. They just want to write about not the magic of what happened, but the madness. It didn't help either one of us. As a matter of fact, it really hurt me and hurt him career-wise, real bad. I hope nobody follows our lead. Because people do what you do. They don't necessarily do what you say, but they do what you do. And that was a bad example. And both Elvis and I are ashamed of that.
Bonnie, of all of your experiences in rock and roll, and you had so many, is there one that just really stands out as a moment where you just kind of looked around and said, this is just incredible, and kind of one of those, I can't believe I'm here moments?
There certainly is. And that's at Carnegie Hall, because I always had a picture of Billie Holiday. There's a famous picture. She's in a full-length gown. She's at Carnegie Hall. She's standing center stage, and it's a polka dot dress, and she has a gardenia in her head. And if I were to put myself in her position and you're standing center stage looking out towards the audience, if you look up and to your right, there was a balcony in that picture. Very ornate balcony. I don't know why I notice weird things when I look at stuff. I notice them things that don't usually stand out. It's always been my favorite picture. When we went to Carnegie Hall, I wasn't even one bit nervous. See, I visualized myself in Carnegie Hall since I was 14 years old. When I'm in my circle of light, when I'm on my stage and I'm in the midst of my performance, I can make whoever I want to be in the audience. I can be anywhere I want to be because I'm in charge of that. I dreamed of being on that stage so many years that finally when we got there, I wasn't even nervous. Everybody else was a nervous wreck. I wasn't even nervous. I couldn't figure it out. And we got on stage, and we got into about the third song, and I was just fine. And I glanced up to my right, and there was that balcony, and came the realization that where I was. I'm going to cry right now. I was standing in the footsteps of Billie Holiday on the stage in Carnegie Hall, and I just lost it. I lost it. I wept like I am right now. I couldn't help it. It was overwhelming. My dreams come true, man. And when they come true, I recognize them.
Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my honor to be able to share it still.
You also spent some time with some other pretty substantial guitar players, Eric Clapton for one. Yeah. Who stands out the most?
Derek Trucks. When I watched him in that video with B.B. King, Derek Trucks was playing old licks. He didn't learn them from Dwayne. Well, he did, you know what I mean? But Dwayne didn't learn them from another guitar player. He learned them from Albert King, and I don't know where they picked it up, but Derek is an old soul. And when I saw B.B. King recognize what that young kid was, he was playing with blues knowledge that he shouldn't have even had. And so it was a God gift. That's that little extra that we're given.
Well, I think you have a long career of showing the world that you have a lot.
I hope. I got a lot to share, some wonderful moments, and it's worth all your effort. And you, guess what? My message is, if you have a dream, it can come true, because if it couldn't, you wouldn't even have the dream. It wouldn't even come in your head if you couldn't do it.
Bonnie, there's a lot of people that in today's world get called legends, but you are, by all definitions, certainly a legend. And I just can't thank you enough for being so generous to take your time and join us here.
For Southern Rock, anytime. Because I don't think Southern Rock will ever die.
We've got a couple of brand new features for you. The first we call Liner Notes, and that's the backstory on some classic rock and roll. 50 years ago this summer, the epic Lynyrd Skynyrd album Pronounced was released. The credits for that album show a guest named Roosevelt Gook on 5 tracks, including Tuesday's Gone, Simple Man, and Freebird. Roosevelt Gook was actually an alias for Alan Peter Cooperschmidt. You might know him better as legendary producer Al Cooper. Also on that album, from the Atlanta Rhythm section, Robert Nix played drums on Tuesday's Gone. Our next guest is considered one of the world's top guitar players. Steve Morse was a founding member of the Dixie Dregs, played with Kansas, was a part of the supergroup Flying Colors, and spent 28 years with the legendary Deep Purple. And now he's back with the Steve Morse Band. Steve, welcome to the Southern Voice Rock Show. Tell us about the new band. I understand there's some roots back in the days of the Dixie Dregs.
Yes. Back in the 70s, we started touring as the Dixie Dregs, and that was with Rod Morgenstein, Andy West, myself, and Alan Sloan. And we had several different keyboard players. Mark Parrish played Steve Dadowski on the first album, and Mark Parrish on the second and third, and then T. Lavitz after that. 4 or 5 years ago, we went out on our 40th anniversary tour with the original band from Pre-Fall, Steve Dadowski, myself, Rod Morris, Andy West, Alan Sloan. And that was a lot of fun. I was still in Purple then, so we had to shoehorn it between my tours, and a tough schedule for me. We didn't do any more after that. During this COVID shutdown of the music industry and almost all industry, I found out that my wife had serious cancer, and it escalated from there. Because of the complications that she had, it was just not an easy, we'll put you on chemo and you'll sit around with a cup of hot tea and everything will be fine, like it is in the movies. It just was obvious that I needed to be there, and I needed to play a central part in her life from then on. I stopped touring with Purple after 28 years. This last year and a half has been very intense, and I feel grateful that I was able to make that decision and do what I think was the right thing. But I really miss playing music, and my wife even said, you should do something. Get out there, and that's what you do, you're a musician. With her support, I said, well, what if we just play a few dates each month, like maybe 3 or 4, or maybe 5 at the outside. Hopefully we can time it so that you can come along. She used to go to our gigs and sell merch. People love to talk to her, so she did really well. So far, she hasn't been able to come along yet, but we're still holding out hope for that in Florida.
I can assure you that our listeners will have you all on their prayer list.
Thank you, and on behalf of everyone, and on behalf of everyone listening, thank you for supporting live music and people that promote it, like yourself. We did our first run, 5 shows, and that went really well. So we decided we could do this as a regular thing, and it's hard to do because the economics of playing a short burst of gigs mean you've got to find places that pay enough to make it possible to hire a road crew each time, lease a truck each time, have them cover lots of miles, coming and going and Deadhead, and everybody flying out. And it's just hard. Anybody who's in a band knows what I'm talking about. It's just hard. So thanks to the people supporting in the form of tickets and merch sales, I think we can do it. We've got several tours lined up, and it's actually going really well. It's so good for me to be able to revisit that part of my life and be immersed in it, even if it's just for some days. It's sort of like having a vacation every month, a long weekend.
I can assure you there are a lot of fans out there that are anxious to get online and get tickets as your tour dates are expanded. It looks like most of what you've announced so far is a little more toward the north, but is there a plan for some southern gigs to be added?
Yes. For some reason, the last few decades, playing in the South has become more difficult. I'll say the last 3 decades ago. We were doing this 4 decades ago. Oh, my God. I must have gotten older just at the beginning of our conversation. I thought I was about 20 years younger than I am.
We all fight that battle.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. I'm glad that I feel young, but on the calendar, it doesn't look so good. The Southeast has been tougher in terms of making the band work on short bursts of gigs. I think they've got a Florida run mapped out, and I'm hoping we could do Nashville to Atlanta, something like that.
For the fans that are coming out, obviously your history in rock and roll includes the Dregs, Kansas, Deep Purple. You got a lot to draw from there. What can they expect to see in your set list?
Yeah, that's a good question. Of the bands that I've done that I'm really proud of is Flying Colors with Neil Morse and Mike Portnoy, Casey McPherson, Dave Root. We occasionally do albums and tours. We've done 3 albums and 3 short tours. So that's another sort of area of influence. However, on this Steve Morse Band tour, we're pulling a few Dregs tunes and some early and more recent material that we did as a trio. For instance, at this show coming up, we're going to have an intermission and then come back out with classical guitar and bass and do a couple duets, which is something I did a lot in the past. I really like that approach as a way to break up the set and to make it a nice sit-down, enjoyable experience rather than a torture session. When we played 30 years ago in clubs, a lot of times there were just these rooms painted black that smelled like stale beer and no seats, hardly any seats. Maybe on the second floor they might have seats that surround the venue, but people had to stand, and then they would try to have as many opening acts as possible to push the show as late as possible to sell as many drinks as possible. It just made for, more of a endurance test than an enjoyable listening experience. So the emphasis now is on having our sound guy make the music come out without being too loud or not being pummeled with subwoofers, and try to have as much variety musically as possible, and to take them places musically that they don't normally hear from in all the established niche labeled type of music stations.
Steve, where's the best place for fans to go for information on the band and tour dates and anything else they might like to know?
SteveMorse.com, and we also, there's a fan site that's even more active.
Well, Steve, I very much appreciate you taking some time to tell our listeners about your new project. And I will share with our listeners that I've talked to a lot of people that have shared a bill with you over different bands in your career. And without exception, you are referred to as one of the nicest guys in rock and roll. So I thought I'd just pass that along to you.
Yeah, well, that's I don't know what to say. But one thing about being in this part of the industry, I'm not talking about the time I was in Deep Purple. We had, people waking us up and telling us what to do and taking us everywhere, not really nice accommodations and all that stuff. But in more of the reality level of the music business, which is where I've lived most of the time, is that you're a blue-collar guy all the time, pulling 16 and 18-hour days, just like the road crew. And it doesn't feel like work because you're getting a chance to play your music and to be part of the universal language that speaks to everybody. It feels like a very positive spiritual thing. But in the meanwhile, you live a basic life where, you get what you put into it. And I think that's good for all people in any profession. But most musicians I've worked with are just plain and simple, down-to-earth people. And almost all of them are gifted and have made the gifts useful by putting in the hard work. It's a cliche to say that talent without hard work is meaningless, but it pretty much is. You have to do the work. And the people, like I said, that we meet on the road, they've been through it all and seen it all. And I would say the majority of them are amazingly nice and trustworthy people. You just can relate to them on a level just because you know what they've been through. Somebody's touring and playing the same kind of places as you are. You instantly have a huge history in common. You know what the deal is going to be. It's been very nice to be able to just walk up and shake hands with somebody and be comfortable, like they're a long-lost cousin or something.
I do know that if you happen to have a date in Central Georgia, there are a lot of guys that you've crossed paths with on the road that would be anxious to see you live. I'm going to make a liar out of myself because earlier I said last question, but I'm going to ask you one more if you don't mind. Of all of the bands that you've played in, which one do you think showcases who you are as a musician most accurately?
That's a tough one. I would say equally the Steve Morse Band and the Dregs, because I've gotten the opportunity to have my writing exist with very little change. I think nothing tells your story more than what you compose. I guess in conjunction with playing live, because playing live, you can't hide. People in the audience are so able to distinguish between somebody that's going down the list and doing, yeah. Just like when somebody at a store is like, yeah, thank you very much. Next, they said the words, thank you very much, but it didn't come out like they meant it. And the same thing when you play live. If you are playing from your heart, people can tell. And, it's more than, it's everything, body language, inflections, the fact that you're enjoying what you're doing as you're relaxed, and even when you're trying hard, but that you're enjoying it because you love the music. So my writing plus being able to play it live, nothing reflects that like the trio, the Steve Morse Band, and, the work I did with the Dregs.
A lot of the artists that I talk with talk about, especially recording in Southern studios, Capricorn and Macon, which obviously you've been there, Studio One, Muscle Shoals, did as good a job as any studios in the country of capturing a band in the studio as close as possible to how they played live. And I think that ties into the point you just made. Yeah,
exactly. And I've been thinking a lot about Gary Rossington and Skinner for some reason. Well, I know the reason because Gary died, but just going over and over, what a wonderful thing it was that he reached out to me, at a time that I was really not sure what to do with my life and had gotten an airline job. And I came back from flying one day and there was a message from Gary. I called him up and says, "Hey, man, we shared a bill together with Kansas, and I got to know him and his wife, Dale. I really liked him. We really clicked." So he invited me just that spur of the moment to come down and record on their live album in Atlanta. And So I said, hey, man, I got short hair. I got a uniform on. I'll change and come down and meet you. It was wonderful. Like I said, I've been just thinking about what a wonderful guy Gary and his wife, what wonderful people they've been, and how much we have in common. Just hanging around Atlanta in the days of the Dregs, meeting all the different musicians. They've all done so well. And by the way, I don't judge success in terms of record sales or multimedia clicks or whatever. It's being successful in music, to me, means playing what you love and having people appreciate it. That's the bottom line.
Back to the Gary Rossington thing, and I think those all tie in together. But I wrote a tribute after Gary passed. I had met Gary maybe a half a dozen times in my life. We've never had a meal together. We've never had a beer together. We've never had a 15 or 20-minute conversation. So I did not know him well. But I think I speak for people everywhere. The loss felt very personal, and I think that's a tribute to who he was as a person, and I think that's consistent with exactly what you're saying about him. One of the hallmarks of music in the South, it had kind of a family feel to it, and musicians were less competitive and more apt to reach out and extend a hand up to other musicians.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this subject up, and I agree. When Gary invited me to go out on some gigs with them and sit in as sort of a special guest, just kind of for the hell of it. There was the huddle with encouraging and spiritual words spoken that I feel so comfortable with. And it's very common in the Southern rock community and in the country music community. From what I've seen, is that there is pride in not showing your ego. And I love that.
Again, I've had different bands tell me that you've come on stage and played with them, and it's almost like they remember the exact date. It's like burned into their memory. And that's a great testament to who you were as a musician then and who you are now. And I just can't thank you enough for taking time to share some things with our readers, and I can't thank you enough for being back out there and keeping the music alive. It's important.
Well, what you're doing is very important, too, and that's giving people a voice and something different than commercially fed mass medias. And I know everything you click on the internet and so forth has an ad popping up for something. I don't know too much about that. I don't live on those platforms. But, well, like I said, this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't just now reached out to me based on your conversations you had with other people. That whole networking and trying to get things to happen is the greatness of America, and we need to keep doing it.
Well, I've never reached out to anyone from what I consider the golden era of rock and roll for an interview and been told no. I think that's another good testament to the quality of the people involved. The good Lord chose to not give me a singing voice unless you need to clear a room, in which case I'm your perfect guy. My role is to ask the questions and talk with folks like you that do so much for those of us that love music. So I can't thank you enough.
Same here. And by the way, if you call somebody who's hemming and hawing, just say, well, I've never had anybody refuse an interview, but you could be the first.
Thank you so much, Steve. And that's a notice to all future rock star interviewees from the great Steve Morse. Don't turn down the interview. Our other new feature is covers. That's where we introduce you to a version of a classic rock song you may have never heard. In the 1980s, Sammy Hagar, Neil Schon, Kenny Aronson, and Michael Shreve formed a supergroup called HSAS. That group only released one album, Through the Fire, and on that album was a remake of the classic rock song, A Whiter Shade of Pale. That version is available on iTunes. We'd recommend you check it out. All right, we are so excited to have Bruce Blackman from Starbuck with us today. Welcome, Bruce.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here, Jim.
Before we get started on your latest news, and there's a lot of that, I want to just jump into the Wayback Machine for a moment. 47 years ago this summer, Moonlight Feels Right started climbing the charts. Now, I wrote an article with you before, and we chronicled kind of the challenges that it took to get it to that point. And, that was considerable. But once it started getting traction, it really took off. And here we are 47 years later. It's still around. People still love it. When the weather warms up, you hear it more and more frequently. It's like one of the anthems of summer. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I actually think it's somewhat of a minor miracle when I consider I had the song for 2 years and no one had heard it but my wife. And she kept telling me, Bruce, that's the best song you've ever written. You got to let somebody hear it. But it's a little bit shocking. I never really expected anything like that. It just crossed 10 million airplays on Spotify.
Wow.
I probably get 30, 40 messages every day from all over the world. It just, it really blows me away. So unexpected. I really can't even talk about it.
Well, it's obviously an incredible song. It has stood the test of time. So that leads us into Starbuck 2022. Was that a product of having a lot of downtime in the pandemic and, you spent a lot of time writing? Was this some material you've been working on for a while? How did that kind of come to fruition?
About half of it was material that I had been working on for some time. I came across an old tape of songs that I had written for Starbuck back in the 70s. So either 3 or 4 of the songs, we never recorded them. And I thought, I'm going to record these. So I did. And what led to it was writing a song for my high school class reunion. And it took off. So I really started writing again and thinking about writing. In essence, you could say it took me 20 years to do this album. Not that I was working nonstop on it, but some of the songs go way back, and then some of them were brand new. It was just something I wanted to do. Didn't expect anything from it at all. I consider music to be my expensive hobby. Some things started blowing, and once again, totally unexpected minor miracle.
Were you shocked when you started getting reports about your songs climbing the charts?
Totally. The first I even knew anything is I saw a yacht rock chart, and a song called That Lady Can Dance was number 1 on their chart. And I went, what? Because that was one of the songs that I wrote for Starbuck. I think I wrote that in 1974. I was totally shocked by that. And then a guy called me who was a consultant for beach music stations. He consults to like 100 and something beach music radio stations. And he said, man, that song I Love Doing Nothing is really kicking it. And I went, what? And he started sending me charts from all these stations. And right now, it's top 10 in dozens of stations. Again, I'm blown away. I don't know what to say.
Well, so that our listeners know, these are not songs that popped on the charts in the last week or two. They've been there for a while, and they're showing some staying power.
Yeah, I saw the Cashbox Record World Beach Music Chart. I didn't even know Cashbox Record World still existed. The song You're the Reason has been on the charts now for 31 weeks. It went to number 1 and stayed there for 2 weeks. And right now it's been on the chart for 31 weeks, and it's at number 25. I Love Doing Nothing on the same chart is number 31 going up. It's only been on the chart for 4 weeks. It's the first time I've ever had 2 songs on the chart at the same time.
Bruce, if Moonlight Feels Right has laid the groundwork, 50 years from now, folks will be listening to tracks from Starbuck 2022.
Maybe so. My grandchildren can hear it.
Now that the album is doing so well, have you put any thought into any tour dates or appearances?
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of offers, but I'm not logistically prepared for it yet. Most of them are for in the summer and into the fall for festivals and things like that. If I can line it up to where we can get some tight dates, not one a week or something like that, because to put the whole thing together, the touring group is a big monumental job. If we can lay them out in a tight 12, 15 dates in like a month, that sort of thing, and not too far apart, we say within 250 miles a night. Yeah, I'm thinking very hard about doing that.
So, Bruce, now that this album has done so well, has that created a desire on your end to maybe start working on another one?
Oh, I'm already doing that because I never stop writing. I've got a recording session Thursday. So we're just write and record all the time. And what I like about that is over time, I can go back and sometimes I'll say, what was I thinking? I shouldn't have recorded that. But I can see what surfaces just, relative to each other. Which ones are the best ones?
Bruce, are you seeing a lot of your old fans really supporting this album? Do you feel like there are a lot of new fans coming into the fold, or is it a combination of the two?
It's a combination, but I would say it's more new than old, because I can see on Spotify my demographics, and my strongest demographic is 24 to 45.
An entirely new generation is becoming a Starbuck fan.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
For our listeners out there that want to keep tabs on what's going on with Starbuck and maybe keep an eye on whether or not there are going to be any personal appearances, what's the best way for them to keep up with you and what's going on?
I would say Facebook, just under my name, Bruce Blackman, or the other way is to go to moonlightfeelsright.com. If we're going to do the tours, that will be posted there. Either way.
Well, listen, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and updating us on everything going on with Starbuck. And I hope that you will kind of keep us in the loop as to what's going on.
I'll do it.
I want to thank our guests that were so generous with their time: Bonnie Bramlett, Steve Morse, and Bruce Blackman. Our hidden gem of the week, a 1990 album from a band out of Louisiana, Baton Rouge, called Shake Your Soul. It never really made it big on the charts, but it's definitely worth a listen. And until the next episode, thanks for checking us out here at the Southern Voice Rock Show.
Thanks for listening.